Hi, everyone. Liberty and freedom is apparently not only a right, but a privilege too. In fact, when William Penn created Pennsylvania's government, he allowed citizens to take part in making laws and gave them the right to choose the religion that they wanted. The colonists were proud of the freedom that Penn gave them. The Pennsylvania Assembly ordered the Liberty Bell in 1751 to commemorate the 50th anniversary of William Penn's Charter of Privileges, which was written in 1701 as Pennsylvania's first constitution. When the bell was ordered, the Speaker of the Assembly asked that a Bible verse would be placed on the bell itself. The verse came from an English translation of a pasuk in this week's parsha. Ukrasem deror ba'aretz lechol yoshvea. Proclaim liberty throughout the land unto all of the inhabitants thereof. And hence the Liberty Bell, initially intended to be rung at the passing of laws or to call the assembly into session, actually had a second purpose, to call for what was then called liberty. Ironically, it was later the abolitionists who later in history aptly named the bell the Liberty Bell, as they noted it needed to ring in order to reflect liberty to all those in the land, including the slaves, as the pasuk inscribed on the bell reflected. So special is the biblical connection to this artifact of American history, it was the very first thing purchased for the American Museum of the Bible. I find myself thinking about this pasuk and the bell as we approach the Shabbos because, well, frankly, I think it's an error. After all, the claims of liberty are not the intention of the pasuk. The Torah tells us that in Yovel, the 50th or Jubilee year, on Yom Kippur, a shofar, note not a bell, will be sounded, and the slaves will return each to his portion and each to his home. Now, why is the stress of such a small segment of population so seemingly overblown in this major issue for the entire nation? Why is it lechol yoshveha, to all the inhabitants? Ostensibly, those who sold their home or their land or themselves was kind of a small part of the population. So why liberty to all? It's a bit melodramatic, no? And also, what does drawer mean anyway? Is it really about freedom? About liberty? So mention the word cherut or geulah. Both imply freedom and redemption. It's not as if we don't have other Hebrew words that are appropriate as well. Why drawer? Now, truthfully, Rashi comments that the word drawer comes from the word dar, or to live. And the intent over here is that in Yovel, one can live wherever he or she wants. And the freedom has returned to the world and the society at large. And the Ramban comes along and he says, well, Kabbalistically, the word implies a continuity of generations, as if somehow a Yovel speaks to multiple generations to awaken them to a bright future. Now, both are solid interpretations, but a little birdie told me that there's a great message to be found in the writings of the Ibn Ezra. You see, the Ibn Ezra explains that the word drawer refers to a bird. For in the same way that the drawer bird can sing when it's under its own influence and its own control, but he cannot do so when he is caged in human control, the same thing's true for the Jewish slave and the people. What an incredible psychological insight. You see, according to Ibn Ezra, freedom is not just an ability to move from place to place, but like a bird, true freedom allows one to even sing, whereas subjugation doesn't even allow one to eat. The Chasam Sofer notes that for this reason, while Esther was living the royal life in the palace, with all of the wealth that a queen over 127 provinces could ever want, it was not she, but Mordechai, who was able to know what was indeed going on. Utilizing his power of nevuah, prophecy, he was not only to know about the threat to the Jewish people, he was also able to know why. And the Chasam Sofer explains that in order to experience nevuah, one needs to be in a free state of mind. And that freedom comes to those who are unrestricted in their movement, not those that are bound by man. The song of the drawer bird, says Ibn Ezra, works the same way. The idea might help us explain why the dror bird is a great symbol of the freedom of the Jewish slave. But for everyone, what freedom is declared for he who's already free? The Lutzker Rav of Zalman Saratskin quotes the Gemara in Kiddushin on Daf Chaf Amud Aleph, which notes that whoever acquires a Jewish slave, kol hakona evet ivri liatzmo, it's as if he has acquired a master for himself. And Tosfos there explains that the slave, in some respects, is on a higher level than his master. After all, Tosfos notes, the Yerushalmi points out that if there's only one pillow in the household, the pillow is given to the servant, not to the master. In that respect, I guess the servant is a master above his master. And so therefore, when the Torah declares the Yovel as a time of release for all of its inhabitants, l'chol yoshveh, it's both including the servants and the masters. When Yovel comes, there's no longer any tie to another. We're all free to serve Hashem, unencumbered by obligations to one another. And in that sense, Yovel carries a message that should ring for all 49 years that surround her. When we're bogged down with anxiety or other issues, we don't have the ability to sing or express our happiness. We need to create mini Yovels for ourselves in our lives, places and times where the mundane is sublimated, so that we're free to see Hashem and connect with Him. Daily davening is a chance for that Yovel experience. It might not be once every 50 years or even one lasting 50 minutes, but it's a chance to stop and to talk to Hashem wide open. Shabbos, whose own freedom qualities were discussed and encouraged nationally this week, and Shavuos, the holiday that's coming up, which is actually a Yovel of Shabbosos, are actually chances to connect, to not be bogged down with challenges, and yes, the silliness of daily life, which keeps us from being able to sing with Hashem. Torah learning, be it formal or even just tuning out the world as you focus on your podcast, your Torah podcast, your Torah WhatsApp group, or one of those myriad of shiurim online, gives one a chance to turn off the world and to get to know Hashem and what's important in life, even just for short times each day. It's the most freeing. And by the way, we ought to take advantage of it. And in that sense, when we waste these opportunities, we are, as filmmaker George Lucas famously noted, all living in cages with the doors wide open. You know, Harry Houdini, one of the greatest magicians ever, had a situation even he couldn't escape. Harry Houdini was known as one of the greatest escape artists. He boasted time and time again that he could break out of any jail cell in the world in under an hour. And each time he would escape in minutes, except one time. You see, in the British Isles, a small town built a new jail cell and challenged Houdini to break free. And Houdini agreed. So he arrived in the prison with confidence, and he was ready to go through his routine the way he had done many times. You see, Houdini was known for a special lockpick he had designed. And once the jail cell was closed, he got to work on the challenge, but discovered that something was unusual about this lock. And for 30 minutes, he worked, and he couldn't break free. His confidence started to drop. 60 minutes passed, and he was still stuck. Houdini was covered in sweat and exasperated, but he still couldn't pick the lock. He tried all of his tricks, and nothing worked. Well, after 2 hours, Houdini collapsed against the door, and the door swung open. He had discovered that it hadn't been locked in the first place. It was only locked to him in his mind. Yovel reminds us that we have one key lesson to learn more than anything else. True freedom comes with personal responsibility. It's up to us to control our own destiny of building a great free world. And free is a means for us to serve Hashem. We tend to forget that we have that freedom. We tend to be tied up with other reasons why we can't serve Hashem, why we're too tired, too busy, or too disinterested and fatigued. And in these cases, we're viewing our minds as a lock, not a key. Yovel sends us back home, like a caged bird now released. Once again, it can sing, because with a clear sense of purpose, you don't need a reason. Your every action, each choice that you make will come naturally, as part of this general commitment to the service of Hashem. And maybe that's why the Torah insists that Dror be proclaimed throughout the land, L'chol Yoshveh, to all of its inhabitants, because almost everyone is enslaved to something. We have more convenience than any generation in history, more leisure, more mobility, more technology, more choices, and yet many people have forgotten how to sing. We have endlessly connected, but we're internally distracted. We're constantly entertained, and yet spiritually exhausted. Well, Yovel reminds us that freedom is not found when the calendar finally clears or when life finally becomes easier. Freedom begins the moment a person takes responsibility to create sacred spaces where nothing owns him except his responsibilities to and with Hashem. And the irony is that, at least as far as we're concerned, the cage keeps keeps keeping us from this freedom. That cage is not locked. The door to freedom is already open. It's just up to us to choose to walk out. And while Houdini couldn't escape an unlocked room because he was assumed he was trapped, we don't need to do the same thing spiritually for ourselves. Sometimes that means just a real davening without checking the phone between Ashrei and Shmona Esrei. Sometimes it means learning Torah without simultaneously multitasking 6 WhatsApp chats and checking if the picture got enough likes. And sometimes it means just simply sitting at a Shabbos or Yom Tov table, fully present, taking the time to just enjoy and to let our souls and ourselves just sing. In a generation drowning in notifications, obligations, and noise, the ability to sit quietly before Hashem and to connect to your own neshama may be the deepest and greatest liberty of all. Wishing you and yours a Shabbat Shalom and a Shabbat Shalom to all.